you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast, dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. Today, I want to talk to y'all about men's health. Men in particular tend to have a harder time going to the doctor for certain types of issues, specifically mental health, but also issues related to sex and so on. So today, I want to focus on the gentlemen who are listening to our podcast and all of the ladies and gentle thems who are loving and knowing someone who identifies as a man. So first up, let's just talk about men's health in general. So men globally tend to die an average of 6 years younger than for women. And for the most part, these reasons are largely preventable. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way. And we can take preventative measures to help the men in our lives live healthier, happier, and longer lives. So first up, the initial recommendation is to spend time with people who make you feel good. And I know that may seem very obvious or potentially also overly simplistic, but it is important to stay connected with the people who are important to you. Spending time with people that you genuinely love being around can be really important for you and for them. And it can also help you guys make sure you're making time for each other. Let's face it, men on average do tend to reach out for mental and emotional support less often than women do. And so it's very important to do these check-ins with your bros who are close enough to really be vulnerable with you. Next up is talking more. So you don't have to be an expert or the end point of these conversations that lead to a solution, but just being there for someone and giving them your time, being present in the moment and really listening can save a life. 70% of men say that their friends can rely on them for support, but only 48% say that they rely on their friends. So really, we're here for our friends, but a lot of us are reluctant to ask others for help ourselves. Reaching out is crucial. And so we need to keep in mind that we are not necessarily a burden on other folks if we reach out for help. So a lot of people tend to think that if we reach out for help, that's admitting a weakness, or reaching out for help is admitting that we aren't as strong as someone else. But it doesn't have to carry that connotation. Think about, instead, how you view your friends who ask for help. Being vulnerable actually takes a lot of courage, in my experience. And so the folks who are able to be vulnerable with you are displaying a lot of courage or bravery. And I respect that in my friends. I especially respect aspects that I do not particularly always exhibit. And I admire that in my friends. So when they display something like that, it's very striking for me. When my friends are excessively vulnerable, then I go, wow, they're really trusting me with this information, and I need to treat it accordingly with that level of reverence. And it also, in a way, makes me feel special that someone is willing to say something so raw and vulnerable to me that really lets me know who they are at their core. Similarly, I think it would be amazing to feel known in that way. And so I want to give that gift to other people too. My buddy Mike always refers to it as the platinum rule, and that is to be kinder and better to others than you would want to be treated. It's not just the golden rule, it's one past that, the platinum rule. And so I found that that's something that's very simple, but it's really shaped me a lot as a person. So understanding that by treating others even better than we would want to be treated, we're essentially going to probably hit a middle ground in the concept that's similar to shoot for the moon and you'll fall amongst the stars, I believe is how it goes, even if that does not entirely make sense, on an astrophysics perspective. But I digress. Reaching out to your friends, though, can really help. I know a lot of times, if you think about yourself internally, you'll go, I'm not really entirely comfortable being so vulnerable as to reach out for help because I already feel so raw. But you would always be glad to help a friend in that position, right? And your friends very likely feel the same way about you too. So sometimes just offering to be there for someone is enough. And it reminds them, hey, I'm in a tight place, but I know I can reach out to this person and I've been there for them. And so therefore I can really trust them when they say reciprocally that they will be there for me. So it's important to talk more with your friends and in that way to also listen more. It's also important to know the numbers. So at 50, men become more likely to get prostate cancer. And so you need to talk to your doctor at age 50 about prostate cancer and whether that's right for you to have a PSA test. If you're African American or you have a father or brother, so there's first order relations to other people who have prostate cancer, then you should definitely be having this conversation as young as 45. Know your numbers, know your risk, and talk to your doctor. It can truly save your life. And since it tends to run in families, if you are the brother of another brother and you have this, or you're a father, then knowing this can also let your family members know that they should be discussing this with a doctor at a younger age as well. You also need to make sure you get to know what's normal for your testicles. You should get them checked regularly and go to the doctor if something doesn't feel right. Now, I know that talking about palpating one's genitalia can be uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it's very much something that is incredibly important to our physical health. It doesn't matter which type of secondary sex characteristics you end up with, you should be able to palpate it and know what feels normal and what feels off. It is your body, and you should be comfortable with your own body. We'll talk more about testicular cancer here in a future segment, but for right now, the last item on our list to help with men's health is to just move more. You should add some activity to your day. And the easiest way to make sure that you do this consistently is to choose to do more of what makes you feel good. Right now, we're all working from home, but we can still go outside and have a different meeting space than what we would normally have. I've worked at home for the last 7 years, and during that time, I largely would work from my patio for meetings because it's refreshing and it's really nice even for your colleagues on the other side of the Zoom or Google Hangouts meeting to see someone who's in a different context than them if they're confined within a building. So I would have mine on the patio, and I still do that type of thing. Also, if you need to get exercise, but you're also having a meeting at the same time, you may be able to just take a walking meeting. I love walking meetings. They're really big in startups and nonprofits, but also they just really help you to be active and to get something done in a time when you would otherwise probably be bored and just sitting there bouncing your leg. So walking meetings are great to do. Go for a hike while social distancing, maintaining at least 6 feet away from other people, and take a walk, and it can be really good for you. You can also park further away from the store that you're planning to go into, or get off the bus stop a few stops earlier and just walk those few blocks up to where you're going. Or instead of the elevator, take the stairs in your building. Even if you only take the partial stairs. If you live on like a 24-floor walk up, you can, take the stairs halfway and then take the elevator, or the other way around. You want to make sure that you don't have to just solely walk up there when you have the elevator if you're just starting out. We're all different individuals, and you just need to start at a point that's comfortable for you. And if you do that consistently, you'll gradually work your way up. Also, you can try to cycle instead of driving. All right, we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about testicular cancer. Stay tuned.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
General reminders for men's health and ways that you can try to be healthier. Now we're going to talk specifically about getting your prostate checked and prostate cancer. So one of the best gifts one of my friends has ever given me is that when she got breast cancer a couple of years ago, she went ahead and let me feel it before they had it removed. Because when you're at the doctor will tell you, oh yeah, you're looking for something that feels about the size or texture of or hardness of a pebble. But it doesn't really make that much sense, especially since a ton of women have fibrocystic breasts. So my friend let me feel this, and it really gave me a solid idea of what I was looking for when I gave myself breast exams. And I think that is an amazing gift that you can give a person as well, to be vulnerable enough to do that for the greater good of your friend. So I'm not necessarily saying that guys should do this for each other, but it's important to at least educate yourself about it beforehand so that you can anticipate what may be to come. So there are greater than 95% survival odds for men with testicular cancer. So most people do survive it. But for some men, they may have some long-term treatment-related side effects, and it can mess with your quality of life. So you want to make sure that we can really focus on getting these young men back to living full and healthy lives. For starters, for young men, in the United States, testicular cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer. So you need to know what your testicles tend to feel like. The best thing you can do for them is to give them a feel every month or so. And if something doesn't feel right or doesn't feel normal for you, go ahead and go to the doctor. There's nothing weird about it. It's part of your body, just like you would check your skin for pimples, or if you had something weird going on with your arm you would notice, then you would also notice your testicles. So for checking your testicles, you want to go ahead and have a warm shower first, and that will make it easier for you to palpate them. Then you're going to roll one testicle between your thumb and your fingers to get to know what's normal for how your specific testicles feel. Then you're going to repeat that with your other testicle. And if you notice any changes in size or shape, or if you notice a lump that wasn't there before, or if it starts to become painful when you touch them, you should see a doctor. So you don't have to necessarily panic, but do let your doctor know, because whether it's a malignant tumor or a benign one or just a cyst, your doctor needs to be alerted so that you can take care of that. So there are several different resources online to get support and to learn more from other men who have been through the experience of testicular cancer. So there's a website called True NTH Testicular Cancer, and it's available for men who have been diagnosed with testicular cancer. You should check it out if that is something that applies to you. In the United States, testicular cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in young men and men who have undescended testes at birth, or who have a family history of testicular cancer, like if a first order relative like your father or your brother has had testicular cancer. All those folks are at an increased risk. And if you've had testicular cancer before, you also have an increased risk that it could return. So your testicles in general, when we're talking about the male reproductive system, are responsible for producing male hormones, those androgens, and mostly is testosterone in this case, as well as sperm. So testicular cancer starts out as abnormal growth, and that's all tumors are uncontrolled cell division, so abnormal growth that develops in one or both testicles. And there are multiple types of testicular cancer, but the most commonly diagnosed form is the germ cell tumor. So if you get diagnosed with testicular cancer, talk to your doctor about your treatment choices, and you might want to get a second opinion as well. But when it comes to your treatment options, testicular cancer is fortunately very treatable as far as cancers go, and they can be really effectively treated and even cured if they're diagnosed and treated early. So if you feel something in your testicles that feels abnormal, like a lump or a very hardness to it, then go ahead and talk to your doctor. The earlier you get that checked, the sooner you can know whether or not you need to proceed with cancer treatments. Advanced testicular cancer, though, can still be cured if you follow a treatment that includes an orchiectomy, and that's the surgical removal of the affected testes, and it's done during general anesthesia. So if you only have one affected testes, then they will go ahead and remove the testicle that is affected via the orchiectomy and leave the other one in there typically. You can also get treatment via chemotherapy or radiotherapy, and that is frequently prescribed after surgery to prevent any remaining cancer cells that may be in there microscopically and may have spread to other parts of your body, like your lymph nodes. Since your lymph nodes produce a lot of the fluids and your immune responses that you need for your lymphatic system, then a lot of times many cancers can metastasize to the lymph nodes before any other areas. So the chemo and radiotherapy afterwards can help make sure that if it has gone anywhere, that we can go ahead and cut it off at the pass. Testicular cancer and removal of one of your testicles should not really inhibit your ability to have sex, and specifically to climax or to have children. And the effect on fertility following removal of one of the testicles has found to be minimal in most studies, as a single testicle produces a very large amount of sperm. There are side effects though, and men who have testicular cancer should speak with their oncologist about perhaps going through the sperm bank venue before commencing with chemotherapy or radiation therapy. So this is very similar to breast cancer or uterine cancer treatments or ovarian cancer treatments. Any type of cancer that has more of a response to hormones can be really negatively impacted by chemotherapy and radiation therapy. So folks who have breast cancer or ovarian cancer or uterine cancer or testicular cancer may very well want to go ahead and store their eggs or their sperm prior to commencing chemotherapy or radiation therapy. Talk to your doctor about that. That's a very personal decision for individuals, and it really just depends on how likely you feel that you are to want children in the future. So it's kind of a 50-50 rate depending on which type of cancer that you have per se, but chemotherapy and radiation therapy treatments can result in sterility. So that's why they go ahead and recommend donating some of your sperm or some of your eggs, and rather than donating, perhaps just storing it. And there are different funds that allow for that and support that as a nonprofit basis. There's also a website called facingourrisk.org that tells you about types of hereditary cancer. So thinking about whether you may even be subject to a genetic/hereditary cancer can be overwhelming, as well as for folks who face other types of disorders that are passed down via genes often, like bipolar disorder or Huntington's disease. But having the information and the resources to know what to do and what to look out for can be comforting and empowering in many ways. So if you go to facingourrisk.org, they have a lot of information for folks on fertility preservation and assisted reproductive technology, as well as different type of reproductive tissue banking services that are available to cancer patients, and how to make this more affordable based on grants that are available for folks who are undergoing cancers that can affect the reproductive system. I highly recommend it so that you can find a resource available to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to make a decision now. You can go ahead and store that material with them via the help of these grants that take a lot of the financial burden out of the equation for deciding whether or not you want kids later on. And you can go from there when you decide down the road. All right, we're going to go on another quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about cancer in men. Stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
testicular cancer, the treatments, the side effects, and really what to look out for in your own testicles. Now we're going to talk about some types of exercise that can reduce the side effects of prostate cancer treatments. So a lot of men who undergo testicular cancer treatment choose androgen deprivation therapy, or ADT, so that they can try to avoid possible side effects that are associated with short-term exercise. Some common side effects of ADT include weight gain, loss of muscle mass, lower cardio fitness, fatigue, or even a drop in the quality of life. And these types of side effects often occur within about 3 months of treatment, after the treatment begins, not when it ends. So in the study, these researchers recruited 50 men who had prostate cancer and were beginning ADT. 50% of them did 2 supervised exercise sessions per week for 3 months. And these hour-long workouts also included some aerobic exercise in addition to resistance exercises. And then they continued the workouts on their own for another 3 months. After those initial 3 months, the men who were in the exercise group showed some significant improvements in common ADT side effects compared with those who were in the control group. And that means that they didn't do anything different. They did not participate in this exercise program. So most of the exercise benefits were visible at the 6-month mark of this study, and this included a lower risk of heart disease and a higher quality of life. That is particularly important since side effects sometimes continue beyond the first 3 months of the ADT treatment. So getting some exercise is really good for you, whether you are already working through testicular cancer treatment or if you're just doing this to get healthy in general. It's very important for you to get exercise for your testicles. And you may not normally consider that when you're thinking about doing cardio. Normally when we think of cardio, we think of the heart. And in my opinion, also think of the lungs. I think about activities like jogging. I don't tend to think about using my uterus or ovaries for jogging, and I doubt that a lot of men think about using their testicles for jogging. But that can very much be important for determining the outcomes of how healthy your body is. So next up, we're going to talk about how eating more nuts can improve your sexual function. So we already know from previous discussions about the Mediterranean diet, which is largely considered to be one of the healthiest diets in the world. They have a lot of nuts and seeds and oils in their diet that contribute to overall health. And indeed, Harvard Men's Health Watch has found that eating more nuts may improve your sexual function. I asked some of my online viewers and friends about what they would be most interested in as men to hear about in a men's health study, and the number one option was sex. So, we're going to address that today. If you eat 60 grams or about 1 cup of nuts per day as a man in your daily diet, it can actually improve aspects of your sex life. This is in the journal Nutrients. And if you'd like to look up the article yourself on Google Scholar, it was published online June 19th, 2019. And in this study, the researchers asked 83 healthy men to follow either a traditional Western-style diet without nuts or just a Western-style diet that included an additional 60 grams or 360 calories or half a cup of a nut mixture that was specifically made from almonds, hazelnuts, and walnuts every day. And then they gave them a questionnaire to assess their physical sexual function. After 14 weeks of study, the men in the nut group reported an improvement in their sexual function, like increased sexual desire and an improved quality of their orgasms compared to men who were in the control group. It's not entirely clear precisely how many nuts may have helped the men, but the researchers suggested that the high amount of nuts and their unsaturated fatty acids and antioxidants might be a factor in this situation. So the TLDR of this study is that nuts and nut oils, like walnut oil, which you can cook with, and we discussed in a previous episode on oils and fats, can actually help your sexual function. So when folks tell you to eat more nuts because they're good for you, it's not just about one particular part of your body. A lot of times, the nutrition that we intake can impact us in very various ways. So don't just think about your heart and your lungs and how jacked you can get or how thin you can be. We also need to think about underutilized organs like the testes. In addition to testicular cancer, some other issues that affect men's health include heart disease and unintentional injuries. But again, thankfully, most men's health threats are largely preventable. That means that gentle thems, make some healthy lifestyle choices. So eat a healthy diet and include physical activity in your personal daily routines. Remember that performing tasks like chopping wood or carrying stuff into the house can also be considered as a physical activity. So just think a little bit about what you normally do per day. Think about how much you sit per day specifically. So personally, I work at home a lot, and so I sit here at my desk working on this podcast or the nonprofit I work with or my Twitch stream or anything else that I might do in my day, like teaching my students. So I spend a lot of time in the sitting position. And because of that, it has an impact on how my muscles are in stretching out. So if I'm not standing a lot, they're not getting a lot of exercise in that direction. And the same thing goes for when I sit all the time. If you also, like me, mostly enjoy the tiger knee position for sleeping at night, then that very well may imply that you are used to sitting in a chair more than you are standing. So it's really good for you to perform perhaps different types of yoga depending on your bodily limitations before you go to bed each night. So making sure that you're doing that Superman shape as well as that banana shape if you're familiar with P90X. So making sure you're laying on your stomach with your arms and legs and your head lifted a bit in the air can help stretch out your spine as well. Granted, always listen to your body. If it tells you that it's having a large struggle in this type of movement, go ahead and listen to it and work your way up incrementally instead. You don't have to go from just planking on the floor to doing the Superman and banana poses. You can work your way up to it gradually. We want to make sure that we do continue stretching while we are youthful as well as when we are older though. And you can do that via yoga or Pilates or just a solid stretching routine. Just remember, never stretch cold muscles. You can go ahead and stretch those warm muscles. That's going to be a lot safer. So don't do a stretching routine right out of bed. Warm up those muscles first. But as you get older, in general, men and women have health concerns that change as we get older. So we need to know things like, can a beer gut result in health problems for men? Is male menopause a myth, or is that true in men's health issues? Could testosterone therapy help you feel younger and more vitalized? It depends, and we need to do more research to get answers to these health questions. We're going to go on a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the leading causes of death in males in the U.S., as well as specifically cancer in men. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about cancer in men and how it's really important to eat nuts to improve sexual function in men. Now we're going to talk about some leading causes of death in males within the United States. Now these numbers are from a CDC study that was published in 2017. And it is combined by the sociological construct of race as well as Hispanic origin. And that includes non-Hispanic white, non-Hispanic black, non-Hispanic American Indian or Alaska Native, non-Hispanic Asian or Pacific Islander, and Hispanic. So race and Hispanic are reported separately on death certificates in general. And so they used both of these to help with understanding the demographics of the study group. In general, they found that of all races and origins, all ages, and so on, the leading cause of death in males within the U.S. is heart disease at 24%. So about a quarter of men of all ages, races, and origins tend to die from heart disease. That is 21% for cancer, almost 22%. Unintentional injuries is the next closest at 7.6%. And below that, at 5% or lower, are chronic respiratory diseases, stroke, diabetes, Alzheimer's, suicide, influenza, and pneumonia, and chronic liver disease. And those last two are at 1.8%. Just to give you a general idea of what you're looking at. So when they studied these, they had a very large group of people, and they based this information on their table of their cumulative sample. So this is also published in the National Vital Statistics Report for 2017, and they discuss different types of birth defects, benign neoplasms, which are types of tumors more or less of uncertain or unknown behavior. They're types of growths, more or less, as well as issues that were malignant neoplasms like cancer, liver disease, diabetes, heart disease, HIV, hypertension, homicides, pregnancy complications, unintentional injuries, and so on. So they examined a very wide range of persons to obtain this data. And when they did, heart disease and cancer kill about 45% of men in the U.S. of all races, origins, and ages. So that's important to keep in mind as we proceed in discussing these concepts together today. For cancer in men, a lot of men tend to die from colon cancer, and that inspires a lot of people to go ahead and get diagnosed themselves if their parents or grandparents or other first-order relatives have had a type of cancer. Then they're more likely to go and get screened. So some folks don't get screened, and they don't go until they have symptoms. and the doctor finds the cancer at that point. But oftentimes by that point, it's already spread. So it's important to follow these screenings at specific ages. And right around the generally agreed upon area of ages for men is to start getting screened for prostate and testicular cancer around the time you turn 50, 45 if you have someone else in your family who has had testicular cancer, who is blood related to you. Now, you should get these regularly, and it can be kind of unpleasant, but overall, a lot of men say the procedure itself is really chill and that it's worth it in order to try to catch cancer early before it becomes very problematic. So in order to lower your chances of getting cancer in these cases, they recommend that you stay away from tobacco. If you do smoke, try to quit or at least drastically reduce how many cigarettes or how much tobacco in general you are imbibing, and to stay away from secondhand smoke. They also recommend staying up to date on your screening tests for colorectal and lung cancer. You should limit the amount of alcohol you drink in a day. Remember, the general recommendation is 2 drinks or fewer for men up to age 65, and then 65 and older, you can have 1 per day. You should also protect your skin from the sun. I think that melanoma is one of the most underrated skin cancers and underthought of skin cancers. I know a lot of folks who slather their kids in sunblock but don't wear any themselves, and it blows my mind just a little bit. Make sure you're protecting your skin from the sun. Also, getting to a healthy weight and staying physically active can really be beneficial for your overall health in making sure your immune system is doing what it needs to do and you're setting your body up for success. So in regards to cancer in men, the most common types of cancer among men in the U.S. are skin cancer, prostate cancer, lung cancer, and colorectal cancer. So for the most part, prostate cancers tend to grow slowly, and they don't tend to cause many health issues in men who have them. The treatment can cause some serious side effects though, and you want to talk to your doctor before you decide to get tested or treated for prostate cancer. Make sure they know all the medications that you're on, any supplements or minerals you may be taking off-label or, not prescribed by your doctor, and so on, so they can know exactly what's going on and make the best recommendation for you and your health partnership. Some cancers are caused by HPV, the human papillomavirus, and that's a very common type of sexually transmitted infection. The HPV vaccine may protect against the types of HPV that most often cause cancers in the penis, anus, and oropharynx, the back of your throat, and that includes the base of your tongue and your tonsils if you still have those. The HPV vaccine is recommended for preteens aged 11 to 12 years, but you can give it to a child as young as age 9. It is also recommended to get the HPV vaccine for everyone through 26 years of age if they're not already vaccinated. It is not recommended for anyone older than 26 years, but in some cases, some adults who are 27 through 45 years and who aren't already vaccinated might decide to get the HPV vaccine after they consult their doctor about risks for new HPV infections and any possible benefits of their vaccination. So HPV vaccines in that age range tend to be less beneficial, as more folks tend to have been exposed to HPV by that point, just by virtue of being older and having more life experiences. The HPV vaccine does prevent against new HPV infections, but it does not treat any existing infections or diseases that the person who is receiving the vaccine may already have. That's why they go ahead and try to give you the HPV vaccine before you've had any exposure to HPV, and why they want younger individuals, especially and in particular, to receive that. It is best if your child receives it according to vaccination researchers and doctors before they become sexually active. So before they have any exposure to HPV. That way, it's going to help guarantee that they are not subject to any cases of HPV, rather than potentially the first person or the second or the fourth that they have contact with has perhaps had it before they are able to get the vaccine. All right, we're going to go on another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about HIV in men. Stay tuned.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about the HPV vaccine and cancer in men. Now we're going to talk about HIV in men. So there was a 2017 study that found that men made up 81% of the 38,739 new HIV diagnoses in the United States and dependent areas. So about 86% of new diagnoses among men were among gay and bisexual men. So the new diagnoses tends to be male-to-male sexual contact and injection drug use of 4%. 9% was heterosexual contact. There was also 4% injection drug use, male-to-male sexual contact 82%, and an other of 1%. So overall, Blacks/African Americans, according to the CDC.gov page, are at 39% on the new HIV diagnosis according to 2017. 28% Hispanics/Latinos, 27% whites, and then Asians 3%, American Indians/Alaska Natives 1%, and multiple races 2%. From the years 2010 to 2016, HIV diagnoses tended to decrease 6% among men overall in the 50 states and the District of Columbia, but that varied for different groups. In 2016, there were 11,913 deaths among men who were diagnosed with HIV in the U.S., and those deaths may typically be due to any number of causes. I'm going to hit you guys with some numbers real quick. So nearly 1 in 7 men with HIV tend to be unaware that they have it. And if you don't know that you have it, then you can't get the medicine you need to stay healthy and or to prevent transmitting it to your partners. So you may be more likely to transmit that infection to other people without even knowing it. A lot of men get HIV through sexual contact, especially anal sex. So anal sex is one of the riskiest types of sex for getting or transmitting HIV. Being the receiver of anal sex is 13 times as risky for getting HIV as insertive anal sex. And men can also get HIV from having vaginal sex with a woman who is HIV positive. That's because the vaginal fluid and blood can carry HIV. And if you don't use a condom or take medicine to prevent or treat HIV, that can also increase your risk. Additionally, we've talked in the past about how your intestines have microvilli, those little finger-like projections with capillaries and such on them to help with gas and also nutrient exchange in your GI tract. So they absorb things into your bloodstream, and that can make it easier for you to get HIV through anal sex if you are the receiver, or the recipient rather. You can also get it through injection drug use. So sharing needles or syringes or other equipment for injecting drugs can put you at a higher risk for getting or transmitting HIV. In 2017, men were 72% or more of the 3,641 HIV diagnoses attributed to injection drug use within the United States. So it's important to keep that in mind. Ebola was also spread in many ways through intravenous use, although in that case it was nuns who were trying to inject people with vaccines and were not heating up and sterilizing their needles properly, who spread some of that, but it was through injections nonetheless. So you can spread a lot of different bloodborne pathogens through needle usage, and it's important that if you are someone who is using that you be careful with it, that you use things that are clean and hit up your local clinics for that. Additionally, in 2017, syphilis and gonorrhea rates were higher among men compared to women. And if you have other STDs, it can greatly increase the likelihood of you getting or transmitting HIV because you're going to have more of those viral cells. If you use condoms the right way every time, then you can protect your partner and yourself during sex from most STDs, and that includes HIV. So TLDR, what is the CDC doing about this? So the CDC is working in partnership with local health departments and community-based organizations to deliver some effective HIV prevention services for men. Granted, the most I ever heard about these type of services was when I was in college. So I believe it's mostly because college students are considered to be a larger at-risk population, but I've not really seen much of these things outside of the college setting. I believe that they're out there. I'm just not sure at how good they are at publicizing their efforts. In 2019, though, the CDC awarded a new cooperative agreement to strengthen the capacity and improve the performance of our nation's HIV prevention workforce. So now we have dedicated providers for web-based and class-based national trainings, as well as tech assistance for 4 geographic regions. The CDC is also funding a demonstration project in 4 different districts or jurisdictions to use molecular HIV surveillance to identify active HIV transmission networks and implement HIV interventions for specifically the Hispanic, Latino, gay, and bisexual male groups. Activities include identifying molecular clusters, assessing transmission and risk networks, as well as HIV testing and linking HIV-positive persons in care. So the CDC also awarded nearly $11 million per year in 2017 for a 5-year period to 30 different types of community-based organizations. And their purpose in this was to provide HIV testing to young gay and bisexual men of color and also transgender youth of color. And the overall goal is to identify undiagnosed HIV infections and link those who have HIV care to the preventive services that are available to them. So under the CDC and their flagship community-based organization cooperative agreement, they've awarded about $42 million per year to different community organizations. And that is to help with resources to support delivering effective HIV prevention strategies to people who tend to be at greater risk. I think that these groups like PACT and HIV treatment networks and Start Talking, Stop HIV can be really helpful in giving you a lot of information about having open communication between your sex partners and friends about preventing and treating HIV. And some of these groups also work to help you stay on your treatment. So they help you with your medical compliance, as well as just retaining awareness and promoting testing. I highly recommend you check them out, and they have this available on the CDC websites as well. All right, we're going to go on another break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the concept of preconception health as it relates to men.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about men and the risk of HIV as it pertains to different demographics, as well as what the CDC is doing about it. Now we're going to talk about some general tips for men. A lot of folks, when we hear the term preconception health, we think, what? Or we think, okay, yeah, that's a thing for women who are trying to become pregnant, right? That's why they take prenatal vitamins. But it also relates to men too. There are specific things that men can do for their own health, as well as the health of the women they associate with sexually and any children that they may produce. One of the top things you can do is to try to make a plan and take action on it. So you may not have necessarily journaled about it, but most of us, I think, have thought about our goals for whether or not we want children and how to achieve those goals, whether we want them or whether we don't. And we definitely need to prepare in either case. It's also okay if you haven't decided yet. You have quite a while to decide, and it's okay to wait until it feels right for you. This goal, though, of setting up whether or not you want to have children and how you will go about pursuing that choice is generally referred to as a reproductive life plan. And it's important to have that plan and to take action on that. It helps to know thyself more than anything else and to know what you're looking for yourself in the future, what you want, so it can help you select a partner who may have similar goals as well. You also want to make sure that you're trying to prevent and treat any STDs or STIs that you may have. Getting screened and treated for STDs or STIs frequently, especially between partners, can really help to protect you and any other partners from STDs, especially while you're pregnant. So pregnancy doesn't prevent you from getting STIs. It only really protects you from getting pregnant again, because you cannot really be double pregnant at that point. But it's important to still protect against STIs. A lot of folks, as we've already discussed, do not know whether or not they have an STI. A lot of folks who have HIV and transmit it are not aware that they have it at the time. So it's really important to avoid that as a man. But also as a man, it's important to prevent transmitting it to a woman and her unborn child, because many STDs or STIs can cause infertility and can also mess up a child. So if a woman has an open outbreak of specific types of STDs when she is giving birth, it can actually cause deafness and or blindness in the child as well. So it's important to get screened and to check yourself to avoid passing that on to a woman who may become pregnant as well. If you are a man and you're concerned about STIs and male preconception issues in general, it's important to stop smoking and using certain amounts of drugs or drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. Certain types of drugs like tobacco and alcohol can be really harmful to your health. And secondhand smoke can also result in early death and disease amongst children and adults who don't even smoke. A pregnant woman who's exposed to secondhand smoke is 20% more likely to give birth to a baby with a low birth weight than women who are not exposed to secondhand smoke during their pregnancies. So even if you're not going to quit smoking for your personal health, think about the health of the folks around you. In addition, if you drink too much alcohol and use street drugs, so non-pharmaceutical, non-FDA approved drugs, can also cause infertility in men. And if you are having trouble drinking or smoking or using drugs, contact a doctor or a local treatment center or a friend who has been through something similar who can help walk you through what to do next. There are a ton of different resources that you can find online as well, and that includes SAMHSA, and that's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. They can help you locate a treatment facility online for drugs or alcohol, and you can also get help via Alcoholics Anonymous and an AA program. If you're looking to quit smoking, you can call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. In addition to preconception issues related to alcohol and drugs, you also want to be careful about toxic substances that you may be exposed to. That can include synthetic chemicals, like what you're using to clean your home or work on your car, or metals, fertilizers, bug spray. If you have a cat or a rodent, their feces can also hurt the reproductive systems of men as well as women. It can also make it more difficult for a couple to get pregnant. So if you are trying to get pregnant or help your partner to become pregnant, then exposure to even very little amounts during pregnancy, infancy, childhood, or puberty can lead to certain diseases. So I know that's a really long time span from pregnancy/gestation through puberty. It can cause a lot of problems. So it's important to protect yourself and the people you love from these toxic substances that can negatively impact male reproductive health as well as female reproductive health. Some of those toxic substances can really come from the workplace as well. So it's not just legal and illegal drugs or cigarettes and stuff, but also anything that adds to a dangerous environment for any potential children. That includes via inhalation or having contact with your skin or ingesting it. And in turn, that also includes workers who aren't properly washing their hands before they're eating, drinking, or smoking. And remember, it doesn't really matter how you feel about whether or not your hands have to be washed, but whether the facts of science say that you're more likely to pass this along to someone else, pass on a virus or some other type of microbe onto someone else. Wash your hands. You don't know whether the person across from you has a compromised immune system, and it's not your place to ask. Just act like everyone can be infected and that you may be infectious. So overall, harmful substances can enter your body via inhaling them in your lungs, having contact with your skin, or consuming them if you're not properly washing your hands or you're receiving goods from someone who has not properly washed their hands before eating, drinking, or smoking. And you can also expose your family to those hazards. You also want to prevent infertility and to reach and maintain a healthy weight. So different types of disorders can affect a man's sperm, and that includes disorders that affect your overall health and lifestyle. So type 1 diabetes or drinking heavily or certain street drugs, Cigarettes, age, obesity, hazardous substances like lead or bug spray, or diseases like kidney disease or hormone problems or mumps can all impact how fertile you are. That also comes down to medicines. And remember, when we talk about medicines, we are talking about prescription, non-prescription, as well as herbal products and supplements. We're also talking about radiation or chemotherapy for cancer. All of these can impact your fertility. So you may not think about that with kidney disease or a hormone problem, but it can very much impact your fertility. And that can be difficult with your partner. So you also want to reach and maintain a healthy weight. Something that a lot of these issues we just listed have in common is your weight or your body mass index. And so obesity among men is associated directly with an increase in male infertility. And being overweight or obese has a higher risk for many different serious conditions, including heart disease, cancers, and type 2 diabetes. But you can also be more at risk for serious health problems if you're underweight. So you need to maintain a healthy weight. And it's not about short-term dieting or yo-yo dieting. It's really about being consistent in what you're eating, making sure you're largely choosing healthy foods. You can still have some ice cream every now and then as a treat, but also having regular physical activity. And staying in control of your weight can really contribute to having good health now, as well as when you age. So whether you're underweight, overweight, or obese, it's important to talk to your doctor or another type of health professional about ways you can maintain a healthy weight. You also want to get your family history, so as much as you can, learn about that so you can know about what you are genetically predisposed to get, and also to prevent different types of problems during pregnancy specifically. Lastly, if you are having trouble with violence or mental health, or your partner is having trouble, then it is important to reach out to places like the National Domestic Violence Hotline, or to go online and learn more about mental health, and just to generally support your partner. Some folks just need a little encouragement to follow their treatment plans. And as someone who genuinely has love for them in your life, you are at a very great place to do so. Thank you for listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show, and writing a nice review always really helps us. Also, if you could please remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'd appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.